Picture this. You wake up tomorrow morning, and your biggest worry isn't traffic, bills, or your boss's angry emails. Instead, you step outside to crystal clear air, unlimited time, and a world that belongs entirely to you and the people you love most. Sounds impossible, right? Like some fantasy that could never exist in the real world? But here's the shocking truth. This life wasn't just possible. It was normal. For over 200,000 years, our ancestors lived exactly this way, and mounting evidence suggests they might have stumbled upon the secret to the best life humans have ever known. While we're trapped in cubicles, stressing about mortgages and scrolling through endless feeds of artificial happiness, our prehistoric ancestors were living like kings. They worked just 4 hours a day. They had zero anxiety about money, politics, or social media drama. They were stronger, healthier, and more connected to their families than we could ever imagine. Tonight, we're going to step back in time and discover why everything we've been told about primitive life is completely wrong. We'll uncover how cavemen cracked the code to human happiness, a code we've somehow forgotten in our rush towards civilization. By the end of this journey, you'll question everything about modern life. You might even wonder if we took a massive wrong turn somewhere along the way. Because when you see how our ancestors really lived, one thing becomes crystal clear. They weren't the primitive ones. We are. You've been lied to your entire life. Every history book, every museum, every movie about prehistoric times has painted the same picture. Cavemen were dirty, stupid, and barely surviving. They lived short, brutal lives filled with constant fear and hunger. They were primitive savages who somehow managed to stumble their way through existence until civilization finally saved them. But what if I told you this story is completely backwards? What if the real truth is that our ancestors figured out the secret to human happiness, and we threw it all away? Think about your typical Monday morning. Your alarm screams at 6 a.m. You drag yourself out of bed, already stressed about the day ahead. You gulp down coffee, check your phone for the latest disasters, and rush to sit in traffic for an hour. Then you spend 8 hours in a windowless office staring at screens, while your boss breathes down your neck about deadlines. You get home exhausted, order takeout because you're too tired to cook, and collapse in front of Netflix until you fall asleep. Then you wake up and do it all over again. For 40 years. Until you retire, broken, sick, and wondering where your life went. Now imagine this instead. You wake up naturally as the sun rises. No alarm clock, no jarring sounds. Just your body telling you it's time to start the day. You step outside your shelter and breathe air so clean it fills your lungs like cool water. The sky stretches endlessly above you, painted in colors you've never seen because city lights have never stolen them away. Your work for the day might be walking through a forest with your closest friends, gathering berries and nuts, or maybe tracking a deer through meadows that smell like wildflowers. You work for about 4 hours, not because someone forces you, but because that's all you need to survive comfortably. The rest of your day, it's yours. Completely yours. You might sit by a crystal clear stream, talking and laughing with people who've known you since birth. People who would die for you, and you for them. You might work on carving a beautiful spear, not because you have to, but because you want to create something with your hands. You might tell stories around a fire or play games with children, or just lie on your back watching clouds drift across an endless sky. No bills, no mortgages, no insurance payments, no taxes, no credit card debt, no student loans, no boss telling you what to do, no traffic jams, no spam calls, no social media making you feel like your life isn't good enough. just freedom. Pure, absolute freedom. This isn't some fairy tale. This was real life for our ancestors for over 200,000 years. They didn't just survive, they thrived. And the evidence is overwhelming that they might have been the happiest humans who ever lived. But here's the part that will really blow your mind. We call them primitive, but they were actually more advanced than us in the ways that matter most. They had better health, stronger relationships, more free time, less stress, and a deeper understanding of how to actually live well. We've been told that civilization is progress, that every generation is better off than the last, that we're the lucky ones who get to live in the modern world with all its amazing technology and conveniences. But what if we got it completely wrong? What if we traded away paradise for a prison we didn't even realize we were building? The more scientists study prehistoric life, the more they discover something shocking. In almost every way that actually matters for human happiness and well-being, our ancestors had it figured out better than we do. They were stronger. They were healthier. They had more free time. They had deeper relationships. They felt more connected to their world and their purpose. They experienced less anxiety, less depression, and less of the quiet desperation that haunts so many modern lives. Meanwhile, we live longer than ever before, but we're more miserable than ever before. We have access to all human knowledge, but we're more confused about life than ever. We can connect with anyone in the world instantly, but we're lonelier than any generation in history. Something went terribly wrong along the way. Tonight, we're going to discover exactly what that was. We're going to step into the world of our prehistoric ancestors and see how they really lived. Not through the twisted lens of movies and museums, but through the eyes of modern science and archaeology. And fair warning, once you see the truth about how good they had it, you might never look at modern life the same way again. Because the biggest tragedy isn't that we lost their way of life. The biggest tragedy is that we've forgotten it was even possible. But what did their daily life actually look like? How did they manage to crack the code that we're still struggling with today? Let's find out. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and realizing you never have to worry about money again. Ever. No rent, no mortgage payments, no insurance bills, no credit card debt keeping you awake at 3 a.m., no anxiety about your retirement account or whether you'll have enough saved for emergencies. Impossible, right? That kind of financial freedom is what we all dream about, but most of us never achieve. But our prehistoric ancestors, they were born into it. Not because they were rich, but because the entire concept of being trapped by money didn't exist. They had something far more valuable than cash. They had true freedom. Let me paint you a picture of what real freedom looks like. It's a crisp morning 50,000 years ago. A woman we'll call Kira opens her eyes as sunlight filters through the trees. She doesn't check her phone because there isn't one. She doesn't worry about being late for work because there's no boss waiting to yell at her. She doesn't stress about bills because bills don't exist. Instead, she stretches, breathes in air that smells like earth and growing things, and thinks about what sounds interesting today. Maybe she'll join a group heading to the river to catch fish. Maybe she'll search for sweet roots in the hillside. Maybe she'll just sit in the sun and weave baskets while gossiping with her friends. The choice is entirely hers. This isn't vacation time she has to earn or days off her boss grudgingly gives her. This is her life, every single day. Compare that to your life right now. When was the last time you woke up and could do whatever you wanted? When did you last have a full day stretching ahead of you with no obligations, no schedules, No one telling you where to be? For most of us, the answer is never. Or maybe a few precious days during vacation, if we can afford one. But Kira and her people lived this way for their entire lives. They were the freest humans who ever existed. Here's what blew my mind when I first learned this. Hunter-gatherers typically worked about 15 to 20 hours per week. That's it. Not 40 hours. Not 60 hours with overtime. Not 80 hours for those climbing the corporate ladder. 15 hours per week. A modern study of the Juhuansi people in Africa found they spent an average of 17 hours a week gathering food and 20 hours a week on domestic tasks like making tools or preparing meals. The rest of their time, over 100 hours per week, was completely free. Think about that. They had 4 times more free time than we do. But wait, you might say, they lived such hard lives. They were always in danger. They had to struggle just to survive. Actually, that's another lie we've been told. Yes, they face different challenges than we do. A storm could be dangerous when you don't have brick walls around you. A broken leg was more serious without hospitals. But their day-to-day lives were far less stressful than ours. They didn't wake up in a panic about deadlines. They didn't spend hours stuck in traffic, blood pressure rising as they watched the minutes tick by. They didn't lie awake at night worrying about layoffs or whether they could afford their kids' college tuition. The stress they experienced was immediate and real, like escaping from a predator or weathering a storm. But once the danger passed, it was over. Their bodies could relax and recover. Our stress never ends. It's a constant low-level poison that eats away at us day after day, year after year. We call it modern life. But there's another kind of freedom they had that we've completely lost. The freedom to be themselves. In our world, we squeeze ourselves into boxes. We wear uncomfortable clothes because they're professional. We bite our tongues in meetings because we can't afford to offend the wrong person. We pretend to be interested in small talk with people we don't even like. We become actors playing roles in a play we never auditioned for. Kira didn't have to pretend to be anyone. Her community knew her completely. Her strengths, her weaknesses, her quirks, her dreams. She could be exactly who she was because her survival didn't depend on impressing strangers or climbing corporate ladders. She was valued for her real skills and her real personality, not for how well she could fake enthusiasm in a job interview. And here's something beautiful. Because everyone in her group was free to be themselves, relationships were deeper and more authentic. No one was putting on a show. No one was networking or trying to use people for advancement. They simply lived together as human beings. Their children grew up in this environment too. Kids weren't shuttled between daycare, school, and after-school programs, while their parents worked soul-crushing jobs to pay for it all. Instead, they learned by playing, exploring, and following their natural curiosity. They weren't forced to sit still for 8 hours a day or memorize facts for standardized tests. They developed real skills by watching adults and gradually joining in. By the time they were teenagers, they were already capable, confident, and deeply connected to their community. Compare that to modern kids who are stressed, medicated, and anxious about their futures before they even hit puberty. So what happened? How did we go from this kind of freedom to the cages we live in now? The answer might surprise you. And once you understand it, you'll see that the problem isn't that we can't live better lives. It's that we've forgotten what better actually looks like. But before we get to that, there's something even more shocking about prehistoric life that will change how you think about work forever. The morning begins without urgency. The sun rises slowly over the horizon, spilling light across the trees and painting the world in gold. Birds stir, their songs weaving into the quiet breath of the forest. A small group of humans stretches, yawns, and begins their day. There is no alarm clock to jolt them awake, no meeting scheduled on a glowing screen, no rush to beat traffic. The rhythm of life is dictated by the sky, the season, the earth itself. When people today imagine cavemen, they often see tired bodies locked in endless struggle. But the truth, uncovered by anthropologists who lived among hunter-gatherers still alive in the modern world, is far different. Survival did not demand 14-hour shifts of grueling labor. On most days, work lasted only a few hours to hunt, to gather fruits, roots, or nuts, to fish in the river. After that, the day stretched open like a wide meadow. There was time to laugh, to play, to teach children, to sit around a fire and speak. In total, 4, maybe 5 hours of focused effort sustained the group. Compare that to the long, exhausting schedules that define modern life, and suddenly, the caveman's existence begins to look less harsh and more enviable. To work in their world did not mean sitting in silence at a desk, eyes dulled by fluorescent light. It meant movement, a man tracking the faint press of hooves in the soil, breathing deeply, every sense sharp. A woman walking with friends, digging for roots with laughter on her lips, children darting at her side, learning as they played. Work was not separate from life. It flowed as part of it. You did not leave your family to go somewhere else to earn a living. You lived, and in living, you provided. This is why the word lazy never truly belonged to them. Finishing the hunt did not mean idleness. It meant freedom. The body still moved, dancing, carving stone, painting on cave walls, shaping bone into tools. The mind still worked, telling stories, passing wisdom, imagining spirits in the firelight. What modern people call downtime was the fertile soil from which culture grew. They knew how to sit in stillness without boredom, how to be present without needing distraction. Think of how strange our world must seem in comparison. We have created gyms to mimic what was once daily survival. We climb artificial machines because we no longer climb trees. We run on treadmills because our feet no longer follow the hunt. We lift iron weights in sterile rooms because our lives no longer require us to carry wood, stones, or children across uneven ground. Cavemen never thought about exercise. They never counted calories or measured steps. They simply lived, and living kept them strong. Even the idea of work-life balance, so desperately chased today, would have puzzled them. There was no split. The balance was built into the day itself. The tasks that fed the body also nurtured the spirit. Gathering food meant walking beneath open skies, teaching children along the way, laughing with friends. Hunting meant adventure, risk, excitement, and at times failure, but also the thrill of returning with something to share. When the work was done, it was truly done. There was no inbox waiting, no phone vibrating late into the night. And yet, it would be wrong to call their life without challenge. Sometimes the hunt failed. Sometimes sickness struck. Sometimes weather turned against them. But even then, the burden was shared. The tribe held together, each person giving what they could. Contrast this with the lonely struggles of modern life, where so many suffer silently behind walls, each carrying the weight alone. The caveman's 4-hour workday was not just about time, it was about belonging. Why then does modern work feel so crushing? Perhaps because it never ends. A caveman could set down his spear knowing the task was complete. Today, the work seeps into every corner. there is always another email, another meeting, another bill. And unlike the clear connection between action and reward in the ancient world, catch a fish, eat a fish, our labor often feels abstract. Many work with numbers on screens, uncertain of their true purpose. The result is exhaustion without meaning. Imagine instead a day shaped by the older rhythm. The sun rises. You walk a few miles with your friends, laughter echoing through the trees. You dig for roots, pluck berries, maybe find honey hidden in a hive. Later, perhaps a hunt, hard work, yes, but filled with movement and anticipation. You return to camp, share food, tell stories as sparks leap from the fire into the night sky. Then sleep, not from collapse, but from contentment. It is a rhythm that gave each moment shape, effort and rest, struggle and reward, movement and stillness. The modern world calls this balance a dream, something to chase with self-help guides and corporate workshops. But for tens of thousands of years, it was simply the way of things. No need for slogans or life coaches. The body rose when it needed food, worked until the task was done, and then returned to the embrace of the tribe. What would you do with such freedom? If 4 hours of real work was all that was required, how would you spend the rest? Would you create art, sing, tell stories? Would you wander farther into the forest just to see what lay beyond the bend? The cavemen lived with that choice every day, and their answer was simple. They lived. And this is the secret at the heart of their existence. The 4-hour workday was not just about survival. It was about what remained after survival. The hours free of obligation became the space where humanity blossomed, where laughter echoed, where hands shaped tools, where voices wove myths, where children learned not by instruction, but by watching, listening, imitating. In this space, culture itself was born. So when we ask why cavemen might have lived the best life in history, we must remember this. Their lives were not ruled by the grindstone. They were ruled by rhythm. They did not chase hours. They inhabited them. And as the flames of their fires faded into night, they carried something many of us still long for today. The feeling of work completed, of belonging secure, of time their own. But the story does not end here, because the rhythm of their days did more than free their time. It shaped their bodies and minds in ways modern people can barely imagine. Stronger, healthier, more resilient, built for life in every sense. And that is where we must turn next. Their bodies were not built in gyms. They were shaped by rivers, forests, stones, and wind. Every step on uneven ground was balance training. Every climb for fruit or honey was a stretch of muscle and bone. Every chase of an animal through tall grass was a burst of endurance, heart pounding in rhythm with the earth itself. Cavemen did not measure fitness, they lived it. Imagine the morning air, cool and damp. A hunter's chest expands as he breathes deeply, carrying a spear, stepping lightly, eyes alert. His legs move with steady strength, his shoulders broad from years of lifting, throwing, and carrying. His body is lean, not sculpted for appearance, but tuned for survival. Strong enough to hunt, quick enough to flee, enduring enough to walk miles each day without collapse. This was not extraordinary. It was ordinary. To be human, then, was to be fit. The food they ate nourished this strength. No packaged snacks, no sugary sodas, no processed meals pumped with chemicals. Their diet was what they could find and share. Fruits, nuts, wild grains, fresh meat, fish, roots pulled from the ground. Every bite carried vitamins, minerals, energy in its purest form. Modern science calls it the ultimate diet, high in variety, rich in nutrients, balanced without being measured. For them, it was simply what the land offered, and it offered enough. Today, entire industries sell us health. We buy supplements, powders, pills. We hire trainers to push us through movements our ancestors performed without thought. We chase diets that promise clarity and strength, but rarely deliver what was once effortless. The irony is cruel. Cavemen, often portrayed as primitive, lived with bodies that modern people spend fortunes trying to recover. But their health was not only physical. Living in open landscapes, sleeping beneath stars, breathing air untouched by pollution, their minds found a clarity that is hard to imagine now. Stress came in sharp bursts, an approaching predator, a storm, the uncertainty of a hunt. But when the danger passed, calm returned. There was no constant hum of anxiety, no endless list of bills, deadlines, or messages waiting to be answered. The nervous system reset daily. Their minds were like rivers, turbulent for a moment, then smooth again. Think of how we live now. Even in safety, stress clings to us. The body is flooded with tension, as though every day were a hunt, but without the relief of victory or rest. Our ancestors, despite real dangers, carried lighter minds. They laughed easily. They sang. They told stories by firelight that gave meaning to what they feared. Their spirits were woven into the fabric of their community, never isolated, never left alone to drown in thought. Children grew strong in this world too. They were not wrapped in plastic, warned endlessly to sit still. They climbed, fell, learned to rise. Their muscles developed naturally, their confidence born from experience rather than lectures. To be raised in such a world was to know your own body deeply, to trust its strength, to respect its limits. The balance of food, movement, rest, and community created humans who were resilient. Illnesses came, of course, injuries, infections, fevers. But without processed toxins, without the diseases of overabundance, they carried a foundation of health that modern life often erodes. Strong bones from constant movement, strong hearts from endless walking, strong lungs from clean air. Even their teeth, free from refined sugar, lasted longer and healthier than ours. We spend billions today to recreate what they lived by default. Yoga to stretch as they stretched, reaching for branches. Meditation to calm minds as theirs calmed in the quiet of forests. Running clubs to mimic the persistence hunts where humans outlasted animals over long distances. We are haunted by the health we traded away. Their bodies were not only tools of survival, but vessels of joy, dancing around fire, chasing children in play, moving with ease across landscapes that would exhaust us today. The line between necessity and pleasure blurred. To move was to live, and to live was to celebrate the strength of flesh and bone. When you imagine them now, do not see only struggle. See bodies tuned to life itself. See faces lit by sun and fire, eyes bright with vitality. See hands rough but capable, feet calloused but strong, backs bent not by offices, but by lifting the weight of a life carried together. Their bodies were built not for appearance, not for vanity, but for endurance, for connection, for freedom. And this freedom flowed into their minds. To be physically alive in that way was to feel the earth directly, to carry less of the invisible burdens we carry now. They did not need therapy to remind them to breathe, to stretch, to rest. Life itself was the teacher, and their bodies were the memory. But the story of their strength is only part of what made their days rich, because beyond the body and mind lay something even deeper, the web of people around them. A tribe, a family, a circle of trust. The next truth of their world waits there, in the connections between hearts. The fire burns low, glowing embers painting the faces of the tribe in flickering light. Around it, voices rise and fall, some laughing, some murmuring, some quiet in thought. Children lean against parents, wide-eyed, listening to stories older than memory. A grandmother's hand brushes through her grandchild's hair as she speaks. A young hunter mimics the leap of a deer, and the circle erupts with laughter. In this simple gathering, you can see what kept them alive. Not just spears, not just food, but each other. For a caveman, life was not endured alone. It was woven into a fabric of belonging. Every hand, every voice, every presence mattered. The tribe was more than survival. It was meaning. And it may be here, in this closeness, that their lives outshine ours most brightly. Today, we live in a world full of connections but starving for intimacy. We have friends counted in the hundreds online, yet many people cannot find one person they trust with their deepest fears. Loneliness has become a silent epidemic, gnawing at the edges of modern lives. Cavemen, with none of our technology, were never truly alone. Their wealth was each other. The human brain was shaped for tribes of 20, 50, maybe 100 people at most. Within that circle, everyone had a role. Everyone had a place. You knew the sound of each laugh, the shape of each face, the smell of each person's skin. Bonds were not fragile threads easily broken by distance or distraction. They were lifelines. If a hunter was injured, the group fed him. If a mother grew weak, others nursed her child. If grief struck, the sorrow was shared until it was lighter. Contrast this with modern life. In cities stacked with millions, neighbors often remain strangers. Families scatter across countries, voices reduced to phone calls. When trouble comes, so many endure it in silence, too ashamed or too isolated to ask for help. Depression, anxiety, emptiness, these grow in the spaces where connection has thinned. Cavemen may have faced hunger, predators, storms, but they rarely faced the crushing weight of loneliness. Think of how their days unfolded. Gathering food was not an errand rushed alone through aisles of a supermarket. It was a walk with companions, filled with jokes, songs, shared discoveries. Hunting was not a solitary grind at a desk. It was teamwork, signals whispered across grasslands, triumphs and failures faced together. Even child rearing was not a burden carried by one pair of parents. The entire group raised the young, teaching them by example, correcting them with kindness, protecting them as one, and in these small acts, love wove itself through the tribe. Not just romantic love, though that existed, but the broader love of belonging. A man did not only feed himself, he fed the group. A woman did not only raise her child, she raised the tribe's children. Bonds of blood blurred into bonds of choice. Your survival was tied to mine, and so my joy became your joy, my sorrow your sorrow. This closeness fed the spirit as much as food fed the body. Around the fire, they told stories not only to pass the time, but to remind themselves that they were one. A tale of a great hunt became a memory shared by all, binding each listener into the event as though they had been there. Myths of animals, spirits, ancestors did not divide them. They unified their imaginations. When fear came, darkness, disease, death, they faced it together, not as isolated minds, but as a single beating heart of many bodies. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine sitting alone in a small apartment, light from a screen filling the silence. Messages ping on your phone, but none of them carry warmth. You scroll past faces you hardly know, words you barely read. You feel connected to thousands, yet no one is truly near. This is the paradox of our age: endless communication, yet aching loneliness. Cavemen would not understand it. To them, being human meant being together. Anthropologists who lived with hunter-gatherer tribes noticed how laughter punctuated their days. Not polite, restrained laughter, but loud, unrestrained joy. A joke told while digging tubers, teasing during a hunt, children shrieking with glee as they played. Laughter was not rare. It was the glue of daily life. In contrast, how often do modern people laugh freely? Many spend entire days in seriousness, their smiles shallow, their hearts heavy. Cavemen knew the medicine of laughter, and they drank it daily. Even conflict was softened by closeness. When anger flared, the tribe had ways to cool it: rituals, humor, patience. Violence within the group was rare because it threatened the survival of all. Disputes could be eased by storytelling, by sharing food, by simple distance until tempers cooled. Compare this to modern conflicts: lawsuits, estrangements, wars. The caveman's tools for peace were humble, but they worked. Think of children in that world. They were not raised by a single pair of eyes, but by dozens. They were never left alone to cry in distant rooms. They slept near warmth, listened to stories nightly, learned skills by watching many hands. Their sense of safety was deep, their sense of worth unquestioned. Even when parents faltered, the tribe stepped in. In modern societies, parents often struggle in isolation, weighed down by expectations. Children are sometimes left adrift, learning from screens instead of hands. The caveman child grew in soil rich with connection. And think too of the elderly. In our world, age often means exile, retirement homes, loneliness, fading into invisibility. But in the tribe, elders were keepers of memory. Their words guided decisions. Their stories taught lessons. Their presence gave continuity. To grow old was not to be discarded, but to be woven deeper into the fabric of belonging. This is perhaps the greatest treasure of their social life. Nobody was invisible. Each person mattered. Each person was seen. Each person's life was stitched into the lives of the others. In that closeness, meaning blossomed naturally. Modern loneliness is often described as hunger of the soul. We try to feed it with distractions, entertainment, possessions, but the ache remains. Cavemen knew no such hunger because the meal of belonging was shared daily. To sit in a circle of voices, to feel the touch of another hand, to know without doubt that your life mattered to those around you, that was their true wealth. And so, when we ask what made their lives the best in history, we must look not only at their freedom of time or the strength of their bodies, but at this: they were rich in one another. But belonging came with more than comfort. It came with wisdom, passed hand to hand, generation to generation. It came with healing, not from clinics, but from the earth and from the care of many hearts. To understand that part of their lives, we must follow them into their medicine, into the ways they healed not only the body, but the spirit itself. The night is cool, the fire soft, and a child coughs. The sound ripples through the circle of the tribe. Heads turn, eyes sharpen, not with panic but with a deep knowing. This is not the moment for fear, but for care. A grandmother reaches for a pouch woven from animal hide. Inside are leaves gathered days before, their scent sharp and bitter. She crushes them between her palms, mixes them with water, and lets the child sip. The tribe leans in, murmuring songs of comfort. Healing for them is not just medicine. It is presence, touch, and faith shared between many hearts. Cavemen did not have pharmacies, hospitals, or white-coated doctors. Yet they had medicine all around them. The forest, the rivers, the soil itself were filled with cures. Every plant had a story. Some leaves cooled fever, some roots eased pain. The smoke of certain herbs kept insects at bay. Honey closed wounds. Clay pulled poison from the skin. They did not write prescriptions. They remembered them, carried them in song and story. Knowledge flowed through generations, woven into daily life, guarded by elders who became living libraries of the earth. It is easy to imagine their world as one of constant suffering. But evidence paints another picture. Their bones, uncovered by archaeologists, show strength. Their teeth, free of refined sugar, often lasted long into age. Injuries healed under the careful hands of community. A broken arm set by a tribe did not mean abandonment. It meant weeks of gentle care, food shared, stories told by the fire while the body knit itself back together. This is the first truth of their medicine: prevention. Their lifestyle itself was a shield. They walked daily, their hearts and lungs constantly trained. They ate food pure and unprocessed. They slept in darkness, awoke in light, letting the body rest as nature intended. They lived close to earth, inhaling air unspoiled by smoke and fumes. Their stress rose in brief storms, a predator's approach, a sudden hunt, but then it fell away. They were not poisoned by the constant drip of modern anxiety. Their immune systems were tuned, sharp, alive. Illness came, yes, but it did not fester as it does in bodies weakened by our modern ways. The second truth was knowledge. They knew their land the way we know our streets. A tracker could read the ground for days-old footprints. A healer could read the leaves for cures. This wisdom was not abstract. It was tested, lived, refined by generations. If one plant failed, another was tried. If one root soothed, its secret was remembered. The tribe carried medicine in its collective memory, a living textbook written in voices instead of ink. And the third truth was care itself. In our world, sickness can isolate. A hospital room filled with strangers, a bed far from family, a body reduced to numbers on machines. For them, sickness drew the tribe closer. A child burning with fever was not left in silence. Songs filled the night to comfort the spirit. Food was chewed by elders and placed gently in the mouths of those too weak to bite. Touch was constant, hands on the forehead, arms holding close, presence never leaving. Healing was not only the body's work, it was the work of love. Picture this: a hunter injured by a fall. His leg twisted, swollen, useless. In a modern imagination, that man would be left behind, doomed. But evidence tells another story. He survived, not for days, but for years. How? Because others carried him. They gave him food, water, warmth. They valued his wisdom, his stories, his guidance, even if he could not run. He was not disposable. He was family. This is medicine too, the medicine of belonging, the knowledge that you matter, even when you cannot give in return. Contrast it with now. Many people die not from sickness itself, but from loneliness. The body falters when the heart feels unseen. Our ancestors did not suffer this. To be ill was to be surrounded. To be weak was to be cared for. The tribe's strength was not measured only in hunter's speed, but in its ability to hold its weakest close. Their cures were not perfect. There were fevers they could not break, wounds too deep to heal, spirits that left despite every hand trying to hold them. Death came more swiftly then, more honestly, but it was not hidden. It was not sterile. The dying were not abandoned in quiet rooms. They were sung to, touched, carried into the next world with firelight on their skin and voices in their ears. Medicine for them was not only to fight death, but to give dignity in its shadow. Even their rituals carried healing. The rhythm of drums, the sway of dance, the chants echoing into night. These were not empty performances. They were medicine for the spirit. They gave meaning to pain, story to suffering. They told the sick that their struggle was part of something larger, that they were not lost alone, but carried within the tribe's song. Modern science now studies what they already knew, that the mind and body cannot be separated. Hope heals, touch heals, story heals. And look at what we have done with medicine now. We have advanced, yes. We can transplant hearts, cure infections, extend life in ways unimaginable. But we have lost something essential. We have turned healing into industry, patience into numbers, sickness into profit. We sell pills for problems born of isolation, machines for diseases born of excess. We treat symptoms, but forget souls. Our ancestors, with fewer tools, remembered what we forget, that the human body is not a machine to repair, but a life to cherish. Imagine for a moment returning to their ways, to walk in a forest and know which leaf to chew for pain, to sit by a fire and feel hands around you when fever comes, to trust that if you fall, others will carry you, to live in a world where medicine is not bought, but shared freely, drawn from earth and heart alike. What would it feel like to know that your healing was not only your burden, but the work of everyone who loves you? This is why their medicine mattered. It was not perfect, but it was whole. It was not about fighting nature, but living in rhythm with it. And in that rhythm, they found health not only of body, but of spirit. The fire still glows. The child still coughs, softer now, soothed by herbs and song. The grandmother watches with eyes that have seen decades of healing. Around her, the tribe breathes together, patient, present, unafraid. For them, medicine is not a building or a profession. It is life itself, lived in circle, lived in care. And this circle leads us into another truth of their lives, one perhaps even more intimate. Because beyond medicine, beyond survival, lay something that shaped every heart, the way they loved, the way they raised children, the way they wove family into the wilderness. That is the story waiting beyond this one. The fire has dimmed, and the night is quiet, save for the rustle of wind moving through grass and the faint hum of insects. A young man leans toward a young woman, not with the rush of modern romance, but with the steady weight of time and tribe. Their eyes meet, and though there are no written vows, no signed papers, no social media posts declaring their bond, everyone knows. Love here is not performance. It is survival. It is tenderness woven into the wild. In the world of the caveman, love was not an escape from daily life. It was the heart of it. To find a partner was not just to feel passion, but to share labor, to raise children, to face storms together. The bond was tested not by luxury, but by necessity. Could you carry wood together? Could you share the burden of hunger? Could you raise a child under stars, with wolves howling in the distance? Love was not fragile under such tests. It grew stronger, but their love stretched far beyond pairs. The tribe itself was a family, and within it, affection flowed in all directions. A mother's child was cared for by sisters, aunts, grandmothers, and even by other men who shared responsibility without question. Children did not belong to one couple, they belonged to all. And so they grew, not in isolation, but in a web of arms, always held, always seen. Modern parents often speak of exhaustion, of raising children without help. of being stretched thin between work and home. In the ancient world, a child was never just one person's work. It was everyone's joy, everyone's duty. Imagine a small child stumbling in the dirt. He falls, cries out, and before his mother can even move, 3 pairs of hands reach to lift him. A grandmother soothes him with a song. An older cousin wipes his tears. His mother smiles, knowing she is not alone. This simple act held profound power. It created children who knew they were safe, children who felt the world itself was full of love. From that love, courage grew, confidence grew. To be raised in such arms was to believe, without doubt, that life was worth trusting. Now picture modern life. A child cries in a room alone, parents distant in their exhaustion, walls thin, but hearts separated. Many children grow surrounded by objects, but starved of presence. Their hands grasp toys, but not always other hands. Their eyes stare into screens instead of faces. Their love, when it comes, often feels conditional, earned by achievement, bargained for with attention. For the caveman child, love was unconditional, woven into daily survival. Even romantic love carried this weight of belonging. It was not chosen from thousands of strangers in swipes and profiles. It was born in shared firelight, in years of knowing someone's laughter, their courage in hunts, their kindness in caring for others. Love was not about surface, it was about character. Desire was there, yes, but it grew alongside respect, tested in real life, not in illusions. And in the raising of children, their methods shaped humans who were capable, confident, and deeply connected. Children learned by imitation. They watched mothers grind roots, fathers carve spears, elders tell stories. They were not forced to sit still in rows, memorizing abstract rules. Learning was living. Love guided that learning, not punishment or shame. When a child erred, the tribe corrected with patience, laughter, or guidance, not with harsh rejection. Discipline was woven into belonging. This way of raising humans created adults who trusted themselves, who trusted others. Adults who did not carry the constant doubt of being unworthy, unloved, unseen. Love in the wild was a foundation, not a question. Consider too how relationships survived storms. Modern couples often split when stress mounts, when money runs thin, when life becomes heavy. For cavemen, those very storms forged the bond. To survive together was to love. To carry water side by side was to love. To share the last piece of meat when hunger gnawed at all was to love. Their devotion was not measured in words, but in actions repeated every day. Love also stretched into the spiritual. To them, life itself was family. The animals, the rivers, the trees. They saw spirit in the deer they hunted, in the fire that warmed them, in the sky that sheltered them. Gratitude infused their love. When they killed an animal, they often offered thanks, a whispered prayer, a ritual that honored the life given. This too was love, not possession, not dominance, but respect for all that sustained them. Compare this to our world. We buy, consume, discard without pause. Relationships break over convenience. Families fracture under the weight of speed and isolation. Children cry behind closed doors. Elders fade into loneliness. Love, though celebrated in songs and stories, is often fragile in practice. For cavemen, though their tools were stone and fire, their greatest technology was love itself. It kept them alive. It gave them meaning. It raised them strong. And what of loss? When a member of the tribe died, the grief was shared. Tears fell together. Songs rose together. The body was not left alone, nor the grieving left abandoned. They honored the dead, carried their memory and story, kept them alive in spirit. Love did not end with death. It expanded, becoming part of the tribe's myth, its history, its very identity. This is perhaps the greatest lesson their love can give us. It was not an emotion alone. It was a practice, a rhythm, a constant choice. It lived in daily actions, in patience, in presence. To love was to feed, to protect, to listen, to hold, to remember. So when we look back and wonder if cavemen had the best life, let us remember this. Their world was hard, but their hearts were not. They loved not in isolation, but in circles. They raised children not in walls, but in webs of arms. They partnered not in fantasy, but in shared reality. Their love was fierce, ordinary, constant. And because of it, humanity endured. The fire burns low again, and the young man leans toward the young woman. Their bond is not written, not photographed, not declared online. It is carried in the eyes of the tribe, in the laughter of children, in the trust of elders. It is real. And it leads us to another truth, one that shaped their days as much as love did. The truth of creativity, of art, of imagination unbound. That story waits just beyond this one. The cave wall is a night sky you can touch, cool stone under your fingers, the smell of smoke in your hair. A soft glow from the fire behind you makes the pigments bloom, red from ochre, black from charcoal, yellow from clay, white from crushed bone. A hand steadies, then moves. You press color into stone, and an animal appears in motion, neck stretched, legs gathered, breath frozen in a leap that never ends. No one asks you why you are doing this. No one demands a price. You paint because the night is large, the heart is full, and the world is speaking. Art is not a special event here. It is the air you breathe. It is woven into the day the way water is woven into the river. Morning might begin with a song before the hunt, a rhythm beaten on a hollow log, feet stamping in dust, bodies warming to the pulse. Midday might bring the soft whir of bone against stone as someone carves a bead, strings it on a cord of sinew, and ties it around a child's neck for luck. Evening returns the voices to the fire, where words curl like smoke into the dark, carrying stories older than the elders themselves. There is no gallery, no stage, no hour reserved for creation. The gallery is the cave. The stage is the clearing. The hour is whenever the feeling rises. Listen closely. A flute made from a vulture's wing bone whispers above the embers. The sound is both lonely and tender, like wind searching the edge of a cliff. The player's eyes are half closed, not from performance, but from remembering. The melody recalls a winter none of the children here have seen. It holds a warning about thin ice and a promise about the slower deer that came after the first hard snow. Music is not entertainment alone. It is a map of time, a vessel for memory. It binds what happened to what might happen again. Around you, hands work without rush. A woman mixes clay in a small bowl, her thumbs pressing and turning, until the shape feels right. She is making a lamp to hold a wick soaked in fat. But when she finishes, she uses a sharp chip of flint to carve a spiral along its rim. It will burn the same whether the spiral is there or not. Yet she marks it anyway, because the lamp is part of life, and life longs to be beautiful. A man knots fiber into a net, humming to himself, and pauses to thread a small shell into the cord, the polish shining faintly. It will catch fish without the shell. He ties it anyway. Even tools speak in their own quiet way. If you think art belongs to the talented few, this place will unsettle you. Here, Everyone creates because creation is how knowledge breathes. A child imitates the low whistle of the flute with a reed, then learns to cut holes in it, testing each sound with laughter. Another child watches her mother grind pigment and begins to draw lines in the dust, connecting them into a deer so simple and clear that the elders smile. Someone tells a story, and a teenager learns where to pause so that the punch of the tale lands like a stone dropped into a still pool. No one is left out. Skill grows the way fire grows, from one small ember shared to another, until the circle is warm. Story is the oldest teacher. You sit and listen, and the world opens. The storyteller does not say morality or lesson. He just moves his hands, and his voice drops soft when the hero is afraid, bright when the hero is brave, rough as bark when danger closes in. In one story, the fox outwits the lion by pretending to be small and harmless until the right moment. In another, the moon introduces herself as the sun's sister and explains why she prefers to travel at night when fewer eyes watch her. The children giggle at this, then grow solemn as the tale turns toward a river crossing where a careless step will mean a winter of hunger. The story ends with a little trick, a tiny twist that makes memory sit up and pay attention. The lesson is folded neatly inside. The next day, when the children reach the river, they pace their steps carefully. The story speaks through their feet. You might ask, what of competition? What of the hunger to be the greatest, the first, the only? That hunger belongs to other worlds. Here the hunger is for connection. A new song is welcomed because it adds to the circle's warmth. A fine carving is admired because it holds skill that can be shared. Praise is common, envy rare. The stone wall does not have space for everyone's painting every night, so some images are painted over, and this too is part of the life of art. Nothing is precious, everything is alive. At dusk, the hunters return with a deer. Before knives touch flesh, someone begins a low chant that everyone knows. It is part gratitude, part apology. The chant recalls a time when the deer ran faster than the wind, and the people learned patience by following hoofprints for days. As the words wrap around the meat, the group's hunger sharpens, but so does its tenderness. A child asks why they sing to an animal, and an elder answers with a story about a human who forgot to sing and lost his way for a season, his feet heavy, his heart closed. The child nods, the lesson sinking deeper than the words themselves. In this place, creation is a rope that ties the living to the living. Art is functional in ways modern minds forget. A cluster of dots on a wall marks the nights until the geese return. A blue streak above a painted ridge means the stream runs deeper there in spring. A series of notches on a smooth bone counts the moons of a pregnancy. A dance with quick knee lifts and sudden stops trains the legs to jump away from snakes. A call and response song teaches the rhythm of paddling against a strong current so the canoe moves as one body. Nothing is idle. Everything is a language. Sometimes, the painter steps aside and lets the child place her small hand against the wall. The outline is traced with red, leaving a negative handprint that will last longer than any of their names. The girl giggles, then grows quiet as she sees her hand turned into a sign that will remain when she is old. The wall holds many hands like this, a choir of presence. When you look at them by torchlight, it feels as if all the ancestors have returned to pat your shoulder and say, "We are here." Creativity fills the gaps that danger opens. When a winter is too long, someone invents a new way to trap fish under ice using willow hoops. When a trail becomes treacherous with mud, someone weaves a mat of reeds to lay over the slickest parts. When a child refuses to sleep, a grandmother makes up a lullaby that rocks slow like a canoe and brings calm. When the men fail a hunt 3 days in a row, a woman recalls a story of star positions that mark the movement of herd animals, and the group changes direction. Here, invention is not a luxury. It is what keeps the fire burning. There are nights when the sky is so clear you can hear the stars. Or perhaps it is only that the cold makes sound carry farther. The crack of ice shifting on the river, the cry of a fox. On such nights, the tribe walks out from under the cave's roof and lies on its back in the open. An elder points with a stick of charcoal toward the dark, drawing lines between lights. The lines become a bear, a hunter, a snake, a bird. The children learn these shapes as if they were constellations of family. Later, when the season changes, they will look for the bear to know when to climb higher in the hills, for the bird to know when to follow the river south. The night is a book, the sky is a page, the drawings on the cave wall are notes in the margin. You can smell time in the pigments, a mineral tang, a trace of fat. You can feel time in the grooves of a carved bead, each scratch a record of a breath taken, a thought held. People speak of progress as though newness were the only kind of beauty. But in this place, beauty repeats in cycles. The deer has always run. The drum has always called feet to the dust. The story has always found its ending by circling back to where it began, only changed by the journey. Creation here is both echo and invention. It lives by remembering. Sometimes a stranger comes from far away, carrying a shell from a distant shore or a smooth black stone unknown to the people here. He brings news about a mountain that smoked last spring, about a herd so vast it took hours to pass, about a river that eats the bank and spits out trees. He also brings a song. By morning, the tribe knows the chorus, and by nightfall, they have added a verse of their own about their cave and their river and their deer. Ideas travel like this, in hands, in pockets, in throats, in feet. A word taught to a child today might be spoken over a different fire, 100 miles away next winter. There is no market. There is only the gift. You sit with the elders and ask how they remember so much. They laugh and say, "We remember because we sing it, we carve it, we move to it, we draw it." Learning is not locked in the head alone. It lives in the body. The way to cross the river is a rhythm stamped with the heels. The way to stalk a rabbit is a curve of the shoulders and a quieting of the breath. The way to greet a stranger is the open palm and the downward glance. The way to grieve is the long, low note that begins in the belly and lifts like smoke. When memory is this full-bodied, it does not slip away easily. There is no consumer culture here, yet desire is not absent. People crave wonder the way they crave meat. A new story is a feast. A new melody draws the tribe closer the way the smell of stew does. But unlike the hunger for possessions, this hunger is satisfied by sharing, not by hoarding. When someone finds a bright stone that catches the sun in a particular way, he calls the children to see. When someone discovers that mixing ash into clay makes a deeper black, she teaches the curious hands around her. If there is status, it belongs to the generous, the ones whose creations make everyone's life gentler or more alive. There is also play. Serious play, the kind that leaves hands dirty and hearts light. Children invent rules with sticks and stones, learning fairness and timing without ever naming those things. Adults play too. They tease the slow walker, mock the serious face, turn a mistake into a shared laugh, and then into a song that will be sung again next season to remember the tenderness of failure. Play is not separate from creativity. It is its doorway. It loosens the grip of fear and lets the new arrive. Not all art looks like art, a way of arranging sleeping places so that the sick are nearest the warmest wall. A knot that can be untied even with frozen fingers. A sequence of claps that signals, come quick but quietly, without frightening the children. These small designs ripple outward, making the tribe safer, kinder, more fluid. You could call this engineering, or design, or culture. Here they call it life, and life is an artist. Sometimes the urge to create surges like weather. A storm of images arrives in a few days, many hands painting in a fever that leaves the walls bright with bulls and horses and handprints and spirals. Then the impulse passes, and the tribe returns to slower tasks, repairing shoes, braiding hair, smoking meat. Other times the urge settles into something like prayer. A woman sits for hours polishing a small stone until it gleams, seeing something inside it that no one else can. When she is done, she ties it to a leather thong and hangs it where the firelight can find it. No one asks, "What is it for?" They already know. It is for being. It is for reminding the eyes to be awake. The spirits are not apart from this. If you listen to the language of this tribe, you would hear no hard line between living and non-living. The river speaks when it floods. The mountain speaks when it rumbles. The deer speaks when it refuses to run and stands its ground. People speak back with offerings, a handful of berries left where the water quiets, a line of ash drawn along the threshold of the cave, a song sung facing the ridge at dawn. Creativity is a conversation across the thin skin of the world. It says, "We see you, and we hope you see us." At times, someone feels called to be the carrier of this conversation, not a priest with power over others, but a watcher whose ears are tuned to the spaces between sounds. This person may dream a story before an important hunt, or feel a song rise in their chest when sickness hovers at the edge of camp. The tribe listens, not because magic is guaranteed, but because attention itself heals. The song focuses the mind, the story steadies the hand, the dance releases the fear. These are medicines that leave no residue except courage. There will be people far in the future who say that art begins when there is surplus, that only when the belly is full does the hand reach for the brush. They will be wrong in a way that makes you ache. Art is also how the belly becomes full. It is how knowledge moves through time without rotting. It is how the timid child learns the step that will one day save her from a falling branch. It is how grief finds shape so that it can be carried instead of crushing the chest. Creation is survival in slow motion. You might notice that the finest objects are often small. A bead, a charm, a chip of stone carved into a tiny bird. You can hold them all in your palm. They are not trophies to be displayed to strangers. They are companions. The tiny bird might sit in a pouch worn over the heart until its feathered edge is polished by body heat. The charm might be placed near a sleeping newborn to ask for gentle dreams. When the owner dies, the object will be given to a child who loved them, and in this way, love wears a path through things, the way feet wear a path through grass. On some evenings, the tribe invents futures, not plans exactly. No one knows what the winter will bring, but possible worlds. What if the river bends away from us? What if the herd does not return? What if we follow the birds farther than before and find a place where the ground itself is warm? The stories of these futures are playful and serious at once, with characters who might be them in another season. Imagining in this way keeps the tribe supple. It lets them practice courage before they need it. It lets them rehearse generosity so it arrives more easily when called. Why do their creations feel so alive? Perhaps because nothing stands between them and what is. No screen, no secondhand version, no mediated light. The color on the wall came from the hill behind the cave. The drum's skin came from the deer that fed them last month. The story's lesson came from a mistake that made them hungry and a kindness that made them whole. When materials are this close, gratitude is unavoidable. And gratitude, quiet as it is, gives everything a shine you cannot counterfeit. You, listening now, might feel a tug in your chest, a longing for this kind of making. You might say to yourself, I do not paint, I do not sing, I have nothing to add. But if you breathe, you can make. If you have a hand, you can draw in dust. If you have a voice, you can hum. If you have a memory, you can tell a child how your grandmother laughed, and that laughter becomes a thread stretched backward and forward through time. The point is not brilliance. The point is belonging. The night deepens. The last painting of the evening is a simple curve, one line that moves from the ground up and out, like a horizon lifting. No one explains it. It does not need explaining. The painter steps back, wipes her fingers on her thigh, and turns to listen to the drum. The flute answers. The bodies begin to move again, slow at first, then bright, feet stamping patterns that the ground already knows. Sparks climb into the darkness and vanish, carrying wishes you could almost read if you were close enough to catch them. Here's the quiet secret. Meaning is not a thing you find in the distance. It is what grows when people make together. It is what rises when someone risks a new song and others hum along. It is what settles on your shoulders at dawn when you see your own hand on the wall and understand that you are only one among many, held and holding. By the time the fire is only coals, the cave holds more than 140. It holds decisions. The new dot clusters near the ridge drawing mean the herd is moving earlier this year. The painting of the river with the darker streak suggests a deeper ford farther east. The chant about the blueberries, repeated 3 nights in a row, fixes their ripening time in every mind. Art has done its gentle work. It has stitched knowledge into the fabric of the tribe without anyone feeling lectured. When the morning comes, dew will bead on grass, and the air will carry that cold metal scent that means a clear day. People will wake and stretch without hurry. They will shoulder packs that carry tools and charms and bread of ground seeds pressed into cakes the size of a palm. As they step out, someone will touch the new painting once, then put 2 fingers to their lips, a small gratitude for all that the stone has taught. Outside, the land will be waiting with its own languages, hoofprint, shimmer, birdsong, eddy, and the tribe will answer with the language they know best, the making of paths, the making of choices, the making of home. And as feet find the first track, the stories of the night begin to adjust themselves into steps. The song of the river becomes the pace of the walkers. The curve of the painted horizon becomes the tilt of the chin. The tiny bead over a child's heart catches light and throws it back, a brief spark like a promise. Creation does not end at the cave door. It moves into the field, the forest, the water, listening for the next thing the earth wants to say. The morning begins not with machines, but with silence broken by the earth itself. A bird's cry, sharp and high. The wind pushing gently through leaves. The low crack of a branch in the distance. To the caveman, none of these are background noise. Each is a message. Each is part of a book, written not in letters, but in sound, smell, touch, and sight. To live in their world was to read that book as easily as we read screens today. Step into their morning with bare feet. The soil is damp, and its texture tells you more than a forecast app ever could. If the ground is softer than usual, rain passed through in the night. If the air tastes metallic, thunder is waiting on the horizon. To us, these details are curiosities. To them, they were knowledge as sharp as a blade, the difference between success and hunger. Their environment was not an enemy to conquer, but a partner to understand. Imagine watching a hunter kneel by a stream. His eyes scan the mud until he points to a faint crescent pressed into the bank. It is the track of a deer, 2 days old. He knows this not from guesswork, but from the sharpness of the edges, the dryness of the imprint, the way nearby grass leans. He touches the ground, feels its firmness, tastes a leaf, smells the air. He stands and says the deer has moved east, and he is right. This is literacy of a kind we have almost forgotten, reading the land the way others read words. It is easy to imagine them as ignorant, but in truth, their knowledge was vast. They knew hundreds of plants, not just by name, but by feel, by season, by use. Which roots to eat, which leaves to wrap wounds, which berries to avoid. They knew the calls of birds, when a warning cry meant a predator was near, when a mating song meant food was plentiful. They knew the stars, not in abstract constellations, but as calendars and maps. The rising of one cluster meant winter was coming. The tilt of another meant it was time to follow the herds. Their environment was not a backdrop. It was an encyclopedia written in real time. And they were not passive readers. They were participants, co-authors in the story of the land. A tribe did not strip a place bare and move on thoughtlessly. They learned the cycles of growth, the seasons of plenty and scarcity, and adjusted their habits accordingly. To take too much was to wound the very ground that sustained them. To waste was to invite hunger later. Out of necessity, they became masters of balance. Modern words like sustainability and ecology are late inventions for something they lived daily. Consider fire. To us, it is a utility controlled by buttons and switches. To them, it was a living spirit. They carried embers in hollow bones or wrapped in dry moss, tended them through storms, coaxed them to life with patience. Fire warmed them, cooked their food, hardened their tools. But it also taught them. They watched how quickly one branch burned compared to another, how flames shifted with the wind, how smoke drove insects away. Every flicker was a lesson. To master fire was to master transformation itself, and water too spoke. The clarity of a stream told if it was safe to drink. The smell warned of rot upstream. The speed revealed how long it might last before drying into a trickle. A child learned to listen to water the way we listen to teachers. Drop a stick, watch how fast it carries, kneel, taste, feel the chill. These were experiments done daily, not in laboratories, but in the open world. They carried skills we would now call advanced science, though they never used that word. They built tools not by accident, but by observation. A stone's fracture taught them about angles. The bend of wood taught them about tension. The flight of a bird's feather taught them about balance and aerodynamics. A net woven wrong wasted a day. A spear point shaped badly cost a meal. Trial and error became intuition, and intuition became wisdom. And still, their mastery was never arrogance. To know the land deeply is also to know your smallness within it. A sudden storm could undo the best laid plans. A predator could outwit the hunter. A fire could escape its circle and rage beyond control. Instead of imagining themselves rulers, They understood themselves as guests. The forest, the river, the plain, they belonged to no one. They were shared, borrowed, respected. This respect showed in ritual. A man who took honey left behind a portion for the bees, whispering thanks. A woman who pulled a root pressed seeds back into the soil. A hunter who killed an animal touched its body, speaking a quiet prayer. These acts were not superstition alone. They were reminders that mastery without humility is destruction. Their environment was not property. It was kin. And what of us now? We hold maps in our hands but cannot read the wind. We command machines that cross oceans but cannot track an animal across a field. We measure calories, protein, vitamins, but cannot taste a leaf and know if it heals or harms. We live surrounded by abundance yet divorced from its source. Supermarkets feed us, but their shelves tell us nothing about the soil, the rain, the sun that made the food. We call ourselves advanced, yet in many ways, we are blind. Imagine what it must feel like to wake knowing the land itself is your ally, to step into the day without fear because the forest speaks and you understand its tongue. Imagine carrying skills that let you walk anywhere, build anywhere, feed yourself anywhere. Imagine the security, the confidence, the belonging. That was the mastery of the caveman. Not power over the world, but power with it. Their knowledge shaped not only survival, but joy. A child learning to identify bird calls laughed when she got them wrong, then glowed when she got them right. A group finding new berries sang as they gathered, tasting sweetness for the first time. A hunter tracing stars felt awe as well as guidance. Mastery was never dry. It was filled with wonder, with gratitude, with the thrill of being part of something vast. So when we speak of cavemen as primitive, let us pause. Primitive compared to what? They lived without skyscrapers, yes. But they lived with skills so deep, so intimate, that the world itself felt like an extension of their own bodies. They knew the crack of a branch as well as we know the vibration of a phone. They knew the smell of rain as we know the glow of a screen. They knew their place, not above the world, but within it. And it is here, in this intimacy, that their lives may have felt richer than ours, because to master the environment was not only to survive, it was to belong. The fire will dim again, and the tribe will sleep, trusting that tomorrow they can rise and read the world anew. But this mastery brought something else too, a spirit of constant journey, of exploration. For them, adventure was not a vacation. It was the shape of life itself. And that is the next story waiting to be told. The horizon is not a border. It is an invitation. The first light of dawn paints the edges of the sky in pale fire, and already the tribe is stirring. There is no thought of staying still for too long, no sense that one patch of earth can hold them forever. Their camp is a circle of ash, a few stones, footprints pressed into dirt. By tomorrow, the wind will erase even these. For the caveman, life itself is movement. Imagine waking to such a rhythm. You do not look at a calendar to plan a holiday or a long weekend. You look at the sun, the herds, the ripeness of berries, the flow of rivers. They are the guides, and they speak clearly. When the herd begins to move, you move. When the berries are gone from one valley, you follow their sweetness to another. Adventure is not a choice. It is the current of life. Walking is the great journey. Miles unfold under bare feet, the ground changing texture from grass to stone to sand. The children laugh as they run ahead, chasing lizards or balancing on fallen trunks. The elders walk more slowly, but they walk. Their stories carry the group forward as much as their legs do. A tale told along the way can shorten 10 miles into what feels like 2. In these steps, knowledge passes: where to find water when the ground cracks, how to read the sky when clouds stack high, how to cross a river without losing your pack to the current. Each journey is a lesson. Now pause and consider our own world. We build routines like cages. We rise, commute, sit, return, repeat. Movement is rare, often forced into artificial slots: an hour at the gym, a jog after work. Travel is purchased, boxed into vacations that end too quickly. We treat adventure as an exception, but for the caveman, adventure was the rule. To wake each day meant stepping into the unknown with open eyes, and danger was real. Predators stalked the edges of camp. A storm could rise without warning. A river could flood. A mountain path could crumble. But these dangers gave life a sharpness. Each step carried weight. Each choice demanded attention. Imagine crossing a valley where lions hunt. The air itself tastes electric. Your senses sharpen, every nerve awake. Fear is present, yes, but so is aliveness. In contrast, how many modern days pass numbed, dulled by repetition, softened by screens? Safety is a blessing, but too much safety becomes its own kind of hunger. Adventure also meant discovery. New valleys opened with different fruits. New rivers teemed with unfamiliar fish. A forest never walked before held birds with strange cries and plants with leaves shaped like stars. For us, discovery often happens in books, on screens, or behind glass. For them, discovery was in the mouth, the hand, the breath. A new plant was tasted. A new stone was tested for its edge. A new trail became the map for tomorrow's hunt. Curiosity was not optional. It was survival, but also joy. Picture a child walking beside her father. She asks why the mountain smokes. He tells her of fire spirits deep inside, restless and angry, yet also generous, because they give warmth and stone. She listens, eyes wide, and next time she sees smoke, she remembers both the danger and the gift. Adventure is also imagination, the weaving of story into the unknown. Every strange sight becomes a doorway into myth. Adventure shaped their bodies. Daily travel across uneven ground stretched muscles, trained balance, built endurance. Their lungs drank deep air, their eyes scanned horizons, their ears caught faint echoes of movement and brush. They were strong not for vanity, but because adventure demanded it. Each path was both gym and classroom. Compare that to modern exercise, often stripped of meaning, performed in sterile rooms. We lift weights but not wood, climb machines but not hills, run treadmills but not trails. Adventure gives purpose to movement. Without it, movement becomes hollow repetition. And what of community? Movement tied them tighter. To travel together meant trust. The slowest set the pace. The strongest carried more. The elders gave guidance. The children lightened the mood. If someone stumbled, another hand reached down. If someone grew weary, songs were sung to steady their steps. Adventure was not individual conquest. It was collective survival. In our world, journeys are often private. Solo trips, separate cars, headphones muting others. For them, adventure braided lives together. At night, when they stopped to rest, the ground became home again. A fire was coaxed to life, stones were arranged, skins laid out. Laughter rose from tired throats, and the stars turned overhead. The same stars that guided their ancestors guided them still. The Milky Way stretched like a river of fire, reminding them of paths even greater than their own. Adventure was not chaos. It had rhythm, like breath. Move, rest, move, rest. There is a sweetness in uncertainty, and they tasted it daily. Will the hunt succeed? Will the river be fordable? Will the trail lead to abundance or emptiness? Modern life avoids uncertainty, seeks control, plans every detail. Yet it is in uncertainty that life reveals itself. Ask yourself, when do you feel most alive? Is it when every moment is predictable? Or is it when the outcome is unknown? When you step into a place you have never seen, with nothing but your senses and your courage? That was their daily bread. Adventure also gave them humility. The land was vast, and they were small. Each journey reminded them of this truth. To climb a ridge and see endless plains stretching beyond sight was to feel wonder and respect. To walk for days under an open sky was to understand that you are only a thread in something enormous. And yet, this thread was not meaningless. It was woven into a pattern that held everything together. Now think of the journeys we choose today. Roads paved, destinations mapped, food packaged, dangers removed. We call it travel, but much of the wildness has been tamed. We arrive not with awe, but with cameras. We do not listen to the land. We consume it. The caveman did not consume adventure. He lived it. He let it carve his muscles, his senses, his stories. Imagine again that horizon, glowing at dawn. The tribe rises, packs lightly, and begins to walk. Children chatter. Hunters scan the distance. Elders hum songs that match the rhythm of steps. Each mile brings the unknown. Perhaps they will find a valley richer than any they have seen. Perhaps they will meet another tribe, exchanging gifts, stories, and songs. Perhaps they will face hunger, cold, or danger. But whatever comes, they will meet it together. And in meeting it, they will be more alive than many of us ever feel. Adventure was not something to be scheduled, not a holiday to escape routine. It was the heartbeat of existence. And in that heartbeat lay something we search for even now, the perfect balance between work, rest, love, fear, discovery, and joy. That balance is the next part of their story. The fire is never too bright, never too dim. It flickers just enough to warm, just enough to light the circle of faces. Around it, life flows in balance. Some prepare food, others mend tools. Children play at the edge of the glow, and elders watch, smiling. Nothing feels rushed. Nothing feels wasted. Everything fits. This was the secret rhythm of the caveman's life. Not perfection in the sense of ease, but balance in the sense of harmony. Imagine the day from start to finish. The morning carries work, but not in excess. A hunt, a gathering, a preparation of firewood. The body moves, the senses sharpen. The group pulls together. By midday, food is shared. Laughter breaks the strain. Children tumble in the dust. As the sun lowers, tasks soften. Repairs, games, stories. And when night arrives, silence is not lonely. It is full of presence. In this simple sequence, everything has its place. Work and rest are not rivals. They are partners. Our world often feels like a pendulum swung too far. Too much labor, not enough rest. Too much consumption, not enough gratitude. Too much isolation, not enough togetherness. We are always adjusting, always chasing a balance that slips from our grasp. For them, balance was not an achievement to be won. It was built into the way they lived. Conflict, too, found its balance. When anger flared, when two men clashed or two women disagreed, the tribe could not afford to fracture. Survival demanded unity, so conflicts were softened by rituals. Songs to release tension, humor to ease pride, distance to cool tempers. Fights rarely turned fatal within the group because the cost would have been too great. The tribe needed everyone. Imagine that, a society where belonging was stronger than anger. Balance also lived in their relationship with the land. They took only what they needed. They ate the animal, wore its skin, used its bones for tools, its sinew for string. Waste was rare. To take more than needed was to invite hunger later. Seasons guided them. Harvest roots in their time. Hunt deer when the herds swell. Leave the young to grow. The earth was not drained. It was shared. Modern sustainability campaigns echo what they simply practiced by necessity. Even danger had its place. A predator nearby was a threat, but it was also a teacher. It sharpened vigilance, trained courage, reminded the tribe of their fragility. Death was real, sometimes sudden, but it was not hidden, not sanitized. The tribe saw it, accepted it, gave it meaning through ritual and story. In doing so, they balanced fear with reverence. Balance stretched across generations. The young carried energy, chasing, learning, experimenting. The middle-aged carried strength, hunting, protecting, providing. The elders carried memory, guiding with stories, holding wisdom. No one was without value. No one was forgotten. Each stage of life had its role, and together they formed a circle as steady as the fire's glow. Compare this to modern societies, where youth often feels impatient, adulthood overwhelmed, and old age discarded. For the caveman, all were needed. All were woven into the fabric of the tribe. Balance also lived inside them. Their bodies moved daily, not in punishing marathons, not in forced repetition, but in natural rhythms, walking, lifting, running, resting. Their diets shifted with seasons, never overindulgent, never starving for long. Their minds swung between moments of stress and long stretches of calm. Modern people are caught in extremes, too much stillness, too much stimulation, too much isolation. They lived in moderation, without seeking it. The nights reveal the heart of their balance most clearly. Around the fire, stories were told that balanced joy with warning. One tale might celebrate a clever fox, another might caution against arrogance. Children listened, their hearts learning. The dualities of life. Play was balanced with seriousness, laughter with lesson, myth with memory. In these stories, the tribe taught balance without ever naming it. And what of spirit? For them, spirit was not separate from the daily. It was in the hunt, in the harvest, in the fire, in the stars. Gratitude kept pride in check. Awe kept fear from paralyzing. Rituals balanced the seen with the unseen. To sing before eating was not performance, it was alignment. It reminded them that life was given, not owed. This balance lasted millennia, longer than any empire, longer than any city, longer than any government we know today. For tens of thousands of years, humans lived in this rhythm, adjusting, learning, thriving. Our modern world, with all its machines and wonders, has existed for only a flicker compared to that vast time. Which life, then, seems like the true experiment? Which life seems like the proven way? Perhaps the greatest tragedy of our age is not that we lost balance, but that we forgot it was possible. We live as though imbalance is normal, as though exhaustion is inevitable, as though isolation is the cost of progress. But the caveman's life whispers another truth, that balance can be daily, ordinary, natural, that work can end, that rest can heal, that conflict can soften, that love can surround. Picture them again, the fire burning low, the tribe leaning close. Some are tired, some playful, some thoughtful. Yet none are out of place. Each is exactly where they belong. This is the perfect balance, not perfection without pain, but harmony in spite of it. A way of life where everything had room, everything had meaning, everything was connected. And yet, balance is fragile. It lasted until a great shift arrived, a choice that promised abundance but carried hidden costs. Agriculture, settlement, civilization, the very roots of what we now call progress. To see what was gained and what was lost, we must walk with them into that turning point. The great trade-off waits just ahead. The morning after balance broke did not look any different. The sun still rose, the birds still sang, the children still laughed. Yet something had shifted. Instead of gathering berries and hunting deer, some stayed behind to plant seeds. Hands that once followed herds now pressed grain into soil. At first, it seemed like progress. Food could be grown, stored, controlled. The tribe no longer had to follow the uncertain rhythm of migration. They could settle, build, plan. It must have felt like security. But hidden in that choice was a trade-off so vast it would reshape humanity forever. Imagine the first fields. Neat rows cut into wild meadows, earth turned over, seeds scattered, water carried in heavy skins to drench the soil. The work was endless. No longer 4 hours of movement and laughter. Now it was dawn to dusk, bending, lifting, sweating, repeating. Farming did not give more freedom. It demanded more labor. The 4-hour workday vanished into the long grind of plowing, planting, weeding, harvesting. Bodies that once roamed wide now stooped low, spines bent, joints aching. Food became abundant, yes, but also fragile. One bad storm, one swarm of insects, one season of drought, and the fields failed. Where hunters once moved to new grounds, farmers were tied to their land. If the soil gave nothing, hunger was absolute. What had seemed like security revealed itself as dependence. The diet narrowed too. No longer the wild variety of fruits, roots, meats, and fish. Now it was grain, again and again. Stomachs filled but bodies weakened. Archaeologists studying ancient bones found signs of malnutrition, shorter stature, weaker teeth, diseases that hunter-gatherers rarely knew. Abundance came with a hidden hunger. With farming came ownership. The land belonged to someone, and someone else was excluded. Boundaries grew where once there were none. A river that once belonged to all now became property. A field became wealth. Inequality crept in. Those who had more land had more food, more power, more control. Those with less became servants, laborers, or beggars. The tribe's circle, once equal, began to fracture into ranks. Chiefs, rulers, workers, slaves. The balance of belonging gave way to the hierarchy of possession, and with ownership came conflict. Fields could be stolen. Borders could be crossed. Villages grew jealous of each other. Wars began not over survival alone, but over land, wealth, pride. Spears once used for hunting deer turned toward other humans. Blood spilled not in the defense of family, but in the hunger for control. Civilization carried not only the promise of progress, but the shadow of violence. Consider, too, the rhythm of time. The caveman rose with the sun, rested with the dark, followed the seasons in gentle cycles. The farmer's time was harsher, more rigid. The soil dictated when to plant, when to harvest. The calendar replaced the sky. The bell of labor replaced the song of birds. Time became measured, divided, demanded. The natural flow of life hardened into schedules and deadlines. With villages came walls, walls to protect, but also walls to confine. Once, humans wandered valleys, forests, rivers, mountains. Now they lived behind barriers, tied to one place. Adventure shrank, curiosity narrowed. The horizon was no longer an invitation, but a threat. What had been a life of movement became a life of settlement, and with it, restlessness began to stir. Even community changed. In tribes, everyone was known. Each face, each voice belonged. In growing villages, strangers appeared. Relationships thinned, bonds weakened. Loneliness, once rare, began to creep in. The web of hands that raised a child unraveled. Parents bore more alone. Elders lost their central place as leaders of memory, replaced by rulers of power. The tribe became a crowd, and in that crowd, people began to vanish into anonymity. Spiritual life shifted too. The caveman's spirit was tied to the living world, animals, rivers, stars. With farming came gods of harvest, temples, rituals of control. Spirituality grew grander, but also more distant. The intimate conversation with the earth gave way to authority, dogma, hierarchy. The sacred circle of fire became the towering temple. Some found awe in its grandeur. Others found themselves forgotten beneath its shadow. Civilization brought writing, cities, art, and invention. It gave birth to everything we now call progress. But it also brought taxation, slavery, famine, inequality, war. The trade was made. Freedom for stability, variety for certainty, equality for hierarchy. Humanity gained power, but lost balance. And what of health? Diseases leapt from animals kept in pens, spreading through villages. Crowds made illness spread faster. Malaria, plague, smallpox. These thrived in the density of settlement. Hunter-gatherers had faced dangers, but rarely these. Now death came not only from predators or accidents, but from invisible enemies carried in air, water, insects. The farmer's body bent under new burdens. Some might argue it was worth it. Civilization built pyramids, wrote epics, mapped stars. It paved the way to our world of cities, medicine, machines. But we must ask, at what cost? If happiness, freedom, health, and belonging are the measures, then perhaps the caveman lived better. His life was hard, but whole. Ours is long, but fractured. Picture the first farmer looking back at the hunter's camp. He sees freedom, movement, laughter. Then he looks at his field. Neat rows, hard work, steady harvest. Did he feel pride? Did he feel envy? Did he understand what was lost and what was gained? Perhaps he believed the trade was temporary, that balance could be regained. Yet thousands of years later, we are still wrestling with that choice. The great trade-off was not evil, not foolish. It was human, but it carried a price. And in knowing that price, we can begin to see not only what was lost, but what we might reclaim. Which leads us to the final question. What lessons remain for us now, hidden in the lives of those we call primitive, but who may have lived more wisely than we dare admit? The night is quiet. The fire has thinned to embers, and if you lean close, you can almost hear them. The voices of the ancestors, whispering across time. They do not scold us, nor do they praise. They only remind. They remind us of what it once meant to live simply, to live fully, to live together. For though their bones rest deep in the earth, their lessons still breathe in us. And perhaps, if we listen closely, they can guide us back towards something we have long forgotten. The first lesson is about time. Cavemen did not live by clocks. They lived by rhythm. The sun, the moon, the pulse of seasons. Their work ended when the hunt was done. Their rest began when the stars appeared. In our world, time is sliced, sold, and stolen. Days vanish into screens, hours into traffic, years into endless striving. But we can reclaim rhythm. We can choose to step outside for sunrise, to eat when our bodies are hungry, to rest when night arrives. We can choose to pause, to breathe, to let time belong to us again. Even small rebellions, a morning walk, an evening without devices, are ways of listening to the ancient clock. The second lesson is about the body, Cavemen did not separate work from exercise. They lived in motion. They bent, climbed, carried, ran, and rested. We who sit so much have forgotten the joy of moving because it matters. Yet we can choose. We can walk instead of ride. We can carry instead of order delivered. We can climb stairs, stretch arms, play games. The body remembers what it was made for. Movement is medicine, and in moving, we return to the oldest language we ever knew. The third lesson is about food. They ate what the earth gave, varied and unprocessed. Roots, fruits, nuts, meat, fish, honey. Each season offered something new, and in that variety, they found strength. Today, much of what we call food is engineered, packaged, stripped of life. We eat not to nourish, but to distract. Yet the path back is near. To eat fresh, to eat local, to taste what is real, to see food not as product, but as gift. Every apple, every grain, every bite is an echo of their diet. We can honor them by choosing food that still carries the sun in it. The fourth lesson is about connection. The tribe was everything. No one was invisible, no one forgotten. Children belonged to all, elders guided all. The sick were carried, the grieving held. Loneliness was rare. Modern life has given us millions of contacts, but it has taken away presence. The lesson calls us to restore it, to sit with a friend without rushing, to call family not for obligation, but for warmth, to listen without distraction, to build circles again, smaller perhaps, but real. The tribe can be reborn wherever 2 or 3 gather in sincerity. The fifth lesson is about nature. They did not see themselves as masters of the world, but as kin within it. They spoke to rivers, gave thanks to animals, honored fire. We call this primitive, but perhaps it was wisdom. Our age burns forests, poisons oceans, scars the sky. Yet the path of respect is still open. To plant trees, to save water, to walk gently, to bow, if only in silence, before the mountain or the sea. In reverence lies healing, not only for the earth, but for us. The sixth lesson is about spirit. They did not build walls between sacred and ordinary. Every act, hunting, eating, singing, sleeping, was touched with meaning. Gratitude was daily, ritual was natural, awe was constant. We chase spirituality now as though it is hidden, locked in temples or books. But their lesson is clear. Spirit is everywhere, in the wind through leaves, in the warmth of bread, in the laughter of children. To notice is to pray. To give thanks is to worship. To live aware is to live sacred. And finally, the seventh lesson is about balance. They worked, but not too much. They rested, but not too long. They loved, they grieved, they laughed, they dreamed, all in proportion. They did not stretch themselves to breaking. They did not chase endless growth. They lived in cycles, in seasons, in balance. Our world has lost this. But balance waits for us, always. In saying enough, in stepping away from excess, in choosing depth over more, in remembering that life is not a race to win, but a rhythm to join. None of these lessons demand that we return to caves. We cannot undo history, but we can remember. We can carry pieces of their wisdom into our days, to rise with the sun more often, to move as though our bodies are alive, not machines, to eat food that comes from earth, not factories, to build circles of love where no one is forgotten, to speak to nature as kin, to weave spirit into the ordinary, to walk in balance. Perhaps this is the true gift of their story. Not nostalgia, not fantasy, but guidance. They remind us that another way of living is possible, that happiness is not hidden in more, but in less, that strength is not in conquest, but in belonging, that meaning is not bought, but lived. So as the fire burns low and the whispers of the ancestors fade into the night, we are left with choice: to keep chasing the noise of a world that never rests, or to pause, to listen, to walk a little more like them. The cavemen are gone, but their wisdom waits in every sunrise, every river, every star. And if we dare to follow, we may yet find what they knew all along: that the best life in history is not behind us, nor ahead of us, but beside us, waiting to be lived.